Funding for Shaperless is provided by
Squarespace, the sponsor of today's video.
Okay, so before my friends and I went out to see The Wild Robot, we watched this funny video by Kibi Lane entitled How to Make a Tulin OC (tutorial). It's an instructional video on how to hatch and grow your own baby Tulin. Go watch it yourself. I can't explain it with words. But I'm bringing it up because it's literally all I could think about when watching The Wild Robot. It felt like Roz was growing her own baby Tulin the entire time, and it was so funny. Oh yeah, The Wild Robot was fantastic, by the way. I feel like everyone saw that coming from a mile away based on that first trailer. But yeah, DreamWorks has done it again. And don't you dare say they're back, because they never left. Inconsistency is their brand, and releasing a bunch of dog shit only to follow it up with a masterpiece is just what they do, baby. Ever since I was a kid, they've been doing it. And I don't mind one bit if it means they'll eventually get around to a banger of this caliber. The Wild Robot honestly feels more like Golden Age Pixar than anything, and this might be the first DreamWorks movie I can really say that about. Aside from Prince of Egypt, which is just its own thing entirely, previous DreamWorks bangers like the Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon, etc. movies still feel distinctly DreamWorks. They all have that DreamWorks tone and sense of humor to them. For better in the cases of Shrek and Kung Fu Panda where the crude humor fits right in, or for worse in How to Train Your Dragon where the annoying side characters voiced by celebrities really do not need to be there. DreamWorks certainly has a style, whether it works or not. And that's precisely why The Wild Robot is so cool to me, because it doesn't have that typical DreamWorks style that wouldn't exactly have fit here. There are celebrities in the voice cast, but they honestly do such a good job embodying their characters that I didn't even notice them. I had no clue that was Pedro Pascal or Mark Hamill until the ending credits. They blended in so well. You know, like real fucking voice actors should do. Lupita Nyong'o especially was sensational as Roz. Oh my god, what a stellar vocal performance. The other thing that differentiates this from a typical DreamWorks movie is that the humor didn't feel especially crude. Instead, a lot of the humor tends to derive from how cold and uncaring nature is in general. There was this one joke involving baby possums that, I shit you not, made me laugh harder than anything else I've seen in the theater all year. It all fits pretty well, and not only does the humor convey how terrifying nature is, but that obviously comes across in the dramatic scenes, especially some of the early ones where we really see Roz get torn to shreds by these wild animals. I really love how long it takes for them to actually warm up to her, and it happens for a very natural and earned reason. Mainly though, the heart of the movie is this wonderful relationship Roz forms with her adoptive goose son, and the exploration of motherhood and nature versus nurture that she experiences as she tries to raise him. I really appreciate how this is a kids movie that doesn't mess around, refusing to shy away from what killed Bright Bill's family, and using that for incredibly effective drama. I also love how they don't wait until the third act to reveal it to him. They get it out of the way in the middle of the movie, and as a result, it feels like a genuine development in the story, instead of a manipulative and generic excuse for a third act breakup. Plus, I really like the way this movie equates aspects of a robot, like programming, to elements of nature. It's a clever and potent screenplay that I can only assume was based off a lovely book. As someone who never read it, I could just tell the people behind this movie were incredibly passionate about bringing this story to life with wonderful, eye-popping animation, rendered with not quite as much flair and pizzazz as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. But that makes sense, since this is a very different kind of film. It's not about action, it's about the quiet joys and perils of parenthood, as well as the beauty and wonder of nature. Every single frame of this film supports the story and tone visually. It's just outstanding. And yes, the plot is simple on paper, but refreshingly so. It's nice to have a mainstream animated movie centered on emotion first and foremost, instead of constantly feeling like the plot has to be going somewhere rapidly to keep kids entertained. This honestly feels like one of the only completely uncompromised DreamWorks movies. Like they didn't have to throw anything in there because the studio mandated it. They were just allowed to tell a really good story, using some breathtaking stylized animation. Even the talking animals. I mean, it's not only true to the source material, but thanks to good writing and good vocal performances, it fit pretty naturally. It's really remarkable that I didn't find a single character in this annoying. Like, do you know how easily one of them could have been? But no, everyone fit the tone really well, and most of them were pretty funny and enjoyable. Clearly, Chris Sanders should be allowed to cook more often. I mean, as part of the duo behind Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, it's kinda hard to deny his talents. else. But it's nice to know that he can helm a wonderful solo venture as well. My only real sticking points of this film are some pacing issues. There are definitely some scenes that go by too fast, others a little too slow, and the ending conflict does feel a little crammed in there, even if it is incredibly well done. There's a pretty solid villain that I would have liked to see more of. The movie just didn't really have a chance to introduce her sooner, and thus she didn't leave as big of an impression as I would have liked. I also just don't think Bright Bill is that interesting of a character, unfortunately. I enjoyed his first adult scene where he acts robotic like his mother. It was sweet, and there were times where it kind of felt a little like an autism metaphor, which I really liked. They kind of dropped this after one scene, however, and he's not really as interesting after that compared to Roz or the Fox. Still, it's crazy that I got this invested in an animated movie so heavily focused on migration. I kept thinking, wow, I'm really enjoying this animated migration movie. It's so good, in fact, that I probably don't need to ever watch another animated migration movie ever again. So I never will.
Okay, but does the movie have any sharks in it, James? Nah, I'm just messing with you. Hey everyone, it's the shark-obsessed editor of this video, Yinsid. I have very different opinions from James on certain elements of this movie, not necessarily in terms of their quality, but with some added perspective as someone who's not only read the books, but loves them present tense. I still have my original copy that I got when I was 13, and I've read it many times since. I'm not gonna monopolize this conversation with book talk, this is James's video after all, but there's something I wanted to mention about that ending. I need to talk spoilers for that though, so skip to the time code on screen to avoid them. Notice how I said books, as in plural. The Wild Robot is a book series, and the movie actually combines the stories of the first and second book. This is because one of the many departures from the text is removing Roz's amnesia, which is a strong motivation behind her decision to return to the factory that intersects with wanting to protect the forest. It's kept ambiguous where she comes from until then, where it fleshes out this location, and the main tension is if she'll be able to return home and reunite with Bright Bill. Without going into too much detail, there's more contributing factors that make her conclude that leaving the island is what's best for both herself and the other animals in the book. Returning to what James said about a lack of noticeable executive interference with the screenplay, my guess as to why Chris Sanders decided to give this film a clearly defined ending was in the event that DreamWorks decided it wasn't financially lucrative enough for a sequel. That's something you absolutely have to consider when making an original film be a to be continued. I have mixed opinions on them adapting the other two books as a result of this change, but it shows how there can be unique challenges when stories transitioned into new mediums to a new audience. While this is one small blind spot in an otherwise perfect adaptation, I really have to commend Sanders for how effortlessly he overcame them. And because of that, I'm optimistic that he could create an engaging sequel based on the foundation he's laid and having additional sources of inspiration. But I'd also prefer this version of the story to be its own standalone film, which ties back to personal taste more than anything. Anyways, that's a very condensed version of my thoughts on this aspect of the film, and also my way of recommending reading the books if you haven't. Back to you, James.
Yeah, I'm sure I could say more, but I think it's best if you check this movie out and experience it yourself. It's so rich and detailed and alive. So unlike anything else DreamWorks has ever done, and yet it's hard to think of another studio who could have done this story so much justice. I loved it. I sobbed my way through the credits, which, by the way, there is a post-credit scene, but do not get your hopes up about it at all. I judge movies solely based on their post-credit scenes, and this one was not that good, so I'm gonna have to give The Wild Robot a 3 out of 10. It was not worth the hype, unfortunately. Well, then again, it did remind me of that funny Tulin video. Okay, I think this balances it out. I could probably bump the score up to a 9 out of 10, because it had baby Tulin kinda. Go see The Wild Robot, and also Tulin's Rito Rampage by Keeby Lane. It might be the funniest video I've ever seen in my life, honestly. Okay, my programming compels me to tell you about Squarespace now. Let's go! Squarespace is an amazing online website builder that enables you to create beautiful websites for your business or personal hobby. You can utilize their new design intelligence features to build an amazing, more personalized website tailored to your unique needs, allowing you to create your own digital identity you can use across your entire online presence. Squarespace makes it easy to sell all sorts of things like online courses, blogs, videos, and memberships. Put your content behind a paywall to get recurring revenue. Simply set the price and choose whether to charge a one-time fee or subscription for access. Plus, you can easily manage all your payments in one place with Squarespace Payments. It's super quick and easy. You can get started in just a few clicks and start receiving payments right away. Your customers can use tons of popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit in the US, Apple Pay, Afterpay in the US and Canada, and ClearPay in the UK. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/jfrillis to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.